Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the stars drift by through the main view screen. His ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and looking for planets humans could settle on. It was quiet work, the kind Jake enjoyed after years of military service back on Earth. "Captain, we're picking up something strange on long-range sensors," called out Chief Science Officer Lisa Grant from her station. Her voice carried that excited tone she got whenever they found something interesting. Jake walked over to look at her display. "What kind of strange, Lisa?" "Multiple ships, sir. Big ones. They're not showing up in our database of known vessels." She adjusted the scanner settings and frowned. "Captain, these ships are huge, much bigger than anything we've built." Commander Ryan Torres, the ship's tactical officer, looked up from his console with concern. "Sir, those ships are moving toward us, fast." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Terra Nova was an exploration ship, not a warship. They had basic shields and a few small weapons, but nothing designed for real combat. "How long until they reach us?" "At their current speed, about 20 minutes, Torres replied. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We have unknown vessels approaching. All crew to stations. This is not a drill." The bridge became busy as everyone prepared for what might come. Jake had been through combat before, but that was on Earth, fighting other humans. This was something completely different. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Beth Williams. "It's coming through on multiple frequencies." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The view screen flickered and showed a face that made several crew members gasp. The alien had scales instead of skin, yellow eyes with vertical pupils like a snake, and rows of sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was deep and threatening. "I am Admiral Keshtar of the Zelhari Empire. You have entered our territory without permission. Your species is unknown to us, but that matters little. Surrender your vessel immediately or be destroyed." Jake stepped forward, trying to look calm, even though his heart was racing. "Admiral, I am Captain Morrison of the human vessel Terra Nova. We meant no offense. We didn't know this was your territory. We're explorers, not invaders." The alien admiral's eyes narrowed. "Humans. Another weak species trying to spread beyond their world. The galaxy has too many of your kind already. You will surrender now, or my fleet will turn your ship into space dust." "Sir?" Torres whispered urgently. "Sensors show 50 enemy ships surrounding us. They all have weapons locked on our position." Jake looked at the tactical display. 50 ships against one. The smart thing would be to surrender and hope these Zelhari would be reasonable. But something inside him, something built from humanity's long history of fighting for survival, refused to give up without a fight. "Admiral," Jake said, addressing the alien on screen, "we are peaceful explorers. Attacking us would be an act of war against humanity." Keshtar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "War. Your pathetic species knows nothing of war. We have conquered a dozen worlds. We have crushed armies that fought for centuries. What could one small ship of primitives do against the might of the Zelhari Empire?" Dr. Grant was working frantically at her station, scanning the enemy ships. "Captain," she said quietly, "their ships are powerful, but their technology is different from ours. Their shields operate on a frequency we might be able to disrupt." Jake made his decision. Throughout human history, his species had faced impossible odds and found ways to survive. They had fought against stronger enemies and won through cleverness and determination. Maybe it was time to show these aliens what humans were really made of. "Admiral Keshtar," Jake said, "you're about to learn something important about humans. We don't surrender." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Lisa, can you modify our weapons to disrupt their shields?" "Give me 5 minutes," she replied, already working. "Torres, plot a course through that asteroid field. We'll use the rocks for cover." "Sir, that's extremely dangerous. One mistake and we'll be smashed to pieces." "Better than letting them capture us without a fight," Jake replied. "All crew prepare for combat maneuvers." The Terra Nova suddenly accelerated toward a nearby asteroid field. The Zelhari ships, caught off guard by the human ship's unexpected movement, took several seconds to react. Those seconds made all the difference. "Entering the asteroid field now," reported the helm officer. The ship shook as they weaved between massive floating rocks, some as big as mountains. "Their ships are too big to follow us in here effectively," Torres observed. "But they're trying anyway." Jake watched as several Zelhari vessels attempted to enter the asteroid field. Their large, clumsy ships couldn't navigate the tight spaces, like the smaller Terra Nova. Two of them collided with asteroids and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. "Weapons ready, Captain," Grant announced. "I've modified our particle beam to disrupt their shield frequency." "Target the lead ship and fire," Jake ordered. The Terra Nova's weapons struck the closest Zelhari vessel. Its shields flickered and died, leaving it vulnerable. Torres quickly fired again, hitting the ship's engine section. The alien vessel spun out of control and crashed into a large asteroid. "Impossible," came a transmission from Admiral Keshitar. "How are you doing this?" Jake smiled grimly. "We're human. We adapt." For the next hour, the Terra Nova played a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the asteroids. The human crew worked together with a coordination that surprised even themselves. Grant turned scientific equipment into weapons. Torres used the ship's mining tools to break apart asteroids and hurl the pieces at enemy ships. Even the cook, Pete Sanders, helped by rerouting power from non-essential systems to give them more speed. The Zelhari, used to fighting in open space, with overwhelming numbers, couldn't adapt to this new kind of battle. They lost ship after ship trying to corner the humans in the asteroid field. Their rigid tactics and large vessels became disadvantages instead of strengths. But the Terra Nova couldn't keep this up forever. The ship was taking damage, and they were running low on power. Jake knew they needed to escape while they still could. "Lisa, any ideas on how to get out of here?" She was studying her sensors carefully. "There's a nebula about 2 light-years from here. If we can reach it, their sensors won't be able to track us through the gas and dust. Do we have enough power?" "If we shut down everything except engines and life support, maybe." Jake nodded. "Do it. Torres, prepare to make a run for the nebula on my mark." The Terra Nova burst out of the asteroid field at maximum speed, catching the Zelhari fleet by surprise once again. Several enemy ships fired at them, but the humans had already anticipated this. They used a large asteroid as a shield, letting it absorb the enemy weapons fire while they accelerated away. "They're following us," Torres reported. "Let them try," Jake replied. "Full speed to the nebula." The chase lasted for hours. The Zelhari ships were faster, but the humans were smarter. They dropped pieces of equipment behind them that exploded when the enemy got close, forcing the aliens to slow down and be more careful. They used the gravity of nearby planets to change course suddenly, making it harder for the larger alien ships to follow. Finally, the Terra Nova reached the nebula and disappeared into the swirling clouds of gas and dust. The Zelhari ship circled the nebula's edge, but they couldn't track the human ship through the interference. Inside the nebula, Jake and his crew worked to repair their damaged ship. They had survived, but just barely. More importantly, they had recorded everything about the Zelhari ships and their technology. "Captain," Grant said, "I've been analyzing our battle data. These aliens are powerful, but they're not used to fighting enemies who think like we do. They expect their enemies to fight the way they fight." Jake nodded. "Send a message to Earth. Tell them we've made contact with a hostile alien empire. Tell them that humanity is at war." As the Terra Nova limped home through the nebula, Jake realized that everything had changed. Humans were no longer alone in the universe, and they had just made some very dangerous enemies. But they had also proven something important. When pushed into a corner, humans didn't break. They fought back, and they found ways to win against impossible odds. The galaxy was about to learn what made humans different from every other species among the stars. They were about to discover what happened when you threatened a race that had spent thousands of years learning how to survive by fighting. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez walked into the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, feeling the weight of every alien eye upon her. 6 months had passed since the Terra Nova's encounter with the Zelhari Empire, and now she stood as humanity's representative. before dozens of alien species who had never heard of humans until recently. The hall was enormous, built to accommodate creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some delegates floated in tanks of liquid, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained in special suits. Elena had practiced for weeks, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. The council recognizes Ambassador Rodriguez of the human species, announced the presiding minister, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. You may speak. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady despite her nervousness. Honored delegates, I come before you seeking understanding. Humanity desires peaceful relations with all species in the galaxy. A harsh laugh echoed through the hall. General Vorth of the Krillian Military Alliance stood up, his insect-like features twisted in disgust. Peace? Your species has destroyed 17 Zelhari warships in the past 6 months alone. Only because they attacked us first, Elena replied calmly. We defend ourselves when threatened, but we seek no conflict. General Vorth activated a holographic display showing images from captured human military databases. These are your training manuals. Look at what your species studies. The images showed battle tactics, weapon designs, and strategies for warfare that made several alien delegates recoil in horror. Elena watched as the display showed human military history, tactics for fighting in space, on planets, and even inside enemy ships. To her, these seemed like necessary preparations. To the alien council, they looked like the plans of a species obsessed with violence. Your people have names for hundreds of different types of combat, continued General Vorth. Guerrilla, warfare, psychological operations, siege tactics, urban fighting. Most civilized species know perhaps a dozen ways to resolve conflicts. Humans have cataloged thousands. The crystalline hegemony's representative, a being made of living crystal, chimed in with a voice like ringing bells. We have studied human entertainment broadcasts. Your stories, games, and films all celebrate warfare. Even your children play games that simulate battle, Elena tried to explain. We tell stories about conflict because we believe peace is worth fighting for. Our games teach strategy and teamwork. Or they teach your young to become killers, General Vorth snapped back. Far away on Earth, Admiral Patricia Wells stood in the command center of global defense, watching news feeds from the Galactic Council session. Around her, screens showed the largest military buildup in human history. Factories that once made cars now produced spacecraft. Shipyards worked around the clock building vessels designed for war. Admiral, called Colonel Harris from his station, the Mars training facilities report they're at full capacity. We have over 2 million volunteers in basic training. Patricia nodded. When humanity learned they weren't alone in the universe, and that hostile aliens wanted to destroy them, the response had been swift and total. Every nation on Earth had united for the first time in history. Old enemies became allies in the face of this new threat. What's the status of the Luna shipyards? She asked. Working at 3 times normal capacity. We'll have the first battle. Fleet ready in 2 months. Patricia looked at the tactical displays showing human space. Their territory was small compared to the vast alien empires, but it was growing stronger every day. Humans had always been good at one thing above all others, learning to fight whatever threatened them. At the Martian training facility, Staff Sergeant Danny Cooper watched a group of new recruits practice combat maneuvers in low gravity. These weren't professional soldiers, at least not yet. They were teachers, farmers, office workers, and students who had volunteered to defend their species. Listen up, Danny called to the group. Fighting in space is different from fighting on Earth. There's no up or down, no ground to take cover. Behind. You have to think in 3 dimensions. One of the recruits, Amy Johnson, raised her hand. She had been a professional athlete before the war started, and her natural reflexes made her one of the best students Danny had ever trained. Sergeant, how do we know what the aliens will do? Their tactics might be completely different from ours. Danny smiled. This was exactly the kind of thinking that made humans dangerous opponents. Good question, Johnson. We don't know what they'll do, but we know what we'll do. We adapt. That's what humans do best. He pulled up a holographic display showing the Terra Nova's battle with the Zelhari fleet. Captain Morrison and his crew were outnumbered 50-1. They shouldn't have survived, but they did, because they didn't fight the way the aliens expected. Amy studied the display carefully. They used the environment against the enemy. The asteroids became weapons. Exactly. While the aliens were trying to use overwhelming force, the humans were using their brains. That's our advantage. We don't just fight harder, we fight smarter. The training continued for hours. Danny taught them how to fight in zero gravity, how to use tools as weapons, and how to think like predators instead of prey. These lessons came naturally to humans in a way that would have surprised the alien delegates at the Galactic Council. Back in the council hall, the debate about humanity continued. The Zelhari representative, Admiral Keshtar himself, had arrived to present evidence of human aggression. These humans are unlike any species we have encountered, he said, his scaled face showing frustration. When we destroyed their colony ships, they sent warships. When we attacked their mining stations, they turned the miners into soldiers. They do not know when to surrender. Elena stood to respond. We protect what is ours. Is that not the right of every species? Not the way you do it, Admiral Keshatar hissed. Your species fights as if defeat means extinction. For us it does, Elena replied simply. You have made it clear that you want to wipe out humanity completely. What choice do we have but to resist? The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure thought speaking through a mechanical voice, joined the discussion. We have analyzed human psychology. Your species evolved as hunters on a world where everything was trying to kill you. Most species evolved in peaceful environments and learned cooperation. Humans learned survival. Elena realized this was both humanity's greatest weakness and their greatest strength in these discussions. Other species couldn't understand why humans would fight so desperately, because they had never faced the constant threat of extinction that had shaped human evolution. We are not monsters, Elena said to the assembled delegates. We are survivors. We have learned to be strong because the universe has always been dangerous for us. Admiral Keshtar's eyes glowed with anger. You speak of survival, but you celebrate death. We have intercepted your military communications. Your soldiers sing songs about battle. They laugh while fighting. They find joy in combat. Elena paused, trying to find words to explain something that seemed natural to her but horrifying to the aliens. We find joy in protecting those we love. We sing because music gives us courage. We laugh because humor helps us face fear. The council chamber fell silent. Many of the alien delegates seemed to be struggling with concepts they couldn't understand. Species that had evolved in peaceful environments, that had known only limited conflicts over resources, couldn't comprehend a race that had turned survival into an art form. General Vorth broke the silence. Your species has turned warfare into entertainment, education, and culture. You study the battles of your ancestors like other species study poetry. This is not normal behavior for a civilized race. Elena looked around the chamber at faces that showed fear, disgust, and confusion. She realized that no amount of explanation would make these beings understand humanity's nature. They saw humans as savage warmongers, not as a species that had learned to fight because they had no choice. Honored delegates, she said finally, judge us by our actions, not by your fears. We offer friendship to those who offer it to us. We defend ourselves against those who attack us. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, then perhaps we are not the species you think we are. As Elena left the council chamber, she knew that diplomacy had failed. The galaxy's established powers had already decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. The Zelhari Empire was gathering allies, preparing for a war of extermination against a species they didn't understand. But Elena also knew something the aliens didn't. While they had been debating, humanity had been preparing. Admiral Wells had built a war machine that would shock the galaxy. Staff Sergeant Cooper had trained soldiers who could adapt to any battlefield. And somewhere in space, Captain Morrison and crews like his were still learning how to turn impossible odds into victory. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you threatened a species that had spent 10,000 years learning how to fight for survival. They were about to learn why humans had become the dominant species on a world where everything wanted to kill them. The real war was just beginning, and humanity was ready. Colonel Sam Taylor stood on the observation deck of New Austin's command center, watching 1,000 Zelhari warships fill the sky above his colony world. The massive alien fleet had arrived 3 hours ago, blotting out the sun with their dark hulls. It was the largest invasion force ever assembled in this part of the galaxy. "Sir, they're beginning their landing operations," reported Major Kate Phillips from the tactical station. "Dropships are launching from their main carriers." Sam nodded calmly. He had been preparing for this moment for 8 months, ever since. Intelligence reports confirmed that New Austin was the Zelhari's primary target. The colony world was home to 3 million humans, including families, children, and elderly people, who couldn't be evacuated in time. "All units, this is Colonel Taylor," he announced over the Planetary communication network. "Operation Hornets, Nest is now active. Remember your training. Make every shot count." To anyone watching from space, New Austin looked like an easy target. The planet's defenses appeared light, with only a few visible military installations and scattered defensive positions. The Zelhari had expected to face perhaps 10,000 human soldiers at most. They had no idea that every single human on the planet was now a combatant. Admiral Keshatar observed the landing from his flagship, confident that overwhelming force would succeed where subtlety had failed. His ground forces numbered over 200,000 elite Zelhari warriors, supported by heavy weapons and armored vehicles. "Begin the assault," he ordered. "Show these humans what happens when they defy the Zelhari Empire." The first wave of alien dropships descended toward New Austin City, the colony's capital. As they approached the landing zones, the ships suddenly came under fire from weapons that hadn't been there moments before. Buildings that looked like ordinary apartments, and offices revealed hidden missile launchers. Parks and playgrounds erupted with defensive turrets that had been concealed underground. Lieutenant Ben Clark led his squad through the city's underground tunnel network, moving toward their assigned ambush position. His team consisted of professional soldiers, but they were supported by hundreds of civilians who knew every street, every building, and every hiding place in the city. "Remember," Ben told his team as they prepared for battle, "we're not trying to stop them. We're trying to make them bleed for every meter they advance." The first Zelhari troops to land found themselves in a nightmare. The city that had looked defenseless from orbit was actually a giant trap. Every building had been fortified, every street had been prepared for urban warfare. Snipers fired from windows that appeared empty, then disappeared into buildings that were connected by hidden tunnels. Maria Santos, a civilian engineer who had volunteered for combat duty, crouched in the basement of what used to be a water treatment plant. She and her team had spent months converting the facility into a chemical weapons factory. When Zelhari troops moved through the area above, she released clouds of tear gas that sent the aliens fleeing in panic. "Phase 1 complete," she reported over her radio. "Enemy forces are withdrawing from Sector 7. The Zelhari had never faced this kind of resistance. Their usual tactics involved massive bombardments followed by overwhelming ground assaults against demoralized defenders, but the humans of New Austin weren't demoralized. If anything, they seemed to become more determined as the battle intensified. Frank Williams, a 70-year-old retired veteran, had organized his neighborhood into a militia. His team consisted of teachers, shop owners, and retirees who had lived in the area for decades. They knew every alley, every rooftop, and every secret passage. "Johnson, take your team to the school," Frank ordered over his headset. "The aliens are trying to use it as a staging area. Show them that our children won't be threatened." The battle for the elementary school lasted 6 hours. The Zelhari had expected to find frightened civilians hiding in the building. Instead, they found a fortress defended by people who would rather die than let aliens threaten their community. The school's playground equipment had been turned into cover for defensive positions. The cafeteria had become an ammunition depot. Even the library had been converted into a medical station for treating wounded defenders. As the first day of battle ended, Admiral Keshatar stared at casualty reports that made no sense. His forces had advanced less than 2 kilometers into the city, and they had lost over 15,000 warriors. The humans had lost fewer than 3,000 defenders, but they seemed to be fighting harder than ever. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his tactical officers. "We have superior numbers, superior weapons, and superior training." General Thekmore, his ground commander, looked exhausted and frustrated. "Admiral, these humans don't fight like any enemy we've faced. When we corner them, they don't surrender, they fight harder. When we destroy their weapons, they pick up our weapons and use them against us. When we wound them, they keep fighting, as if they feel no pain." The second day brought new horrors for the Zelhari invasion force. Colonel Taylor had activated the second phase of his defense plan. If the aliens wanted to fight in the city, they would have to face urban warfare at its most brutal. Lieutenant Clark's squad had been reinforced by a team of civilian volunteers, including Amy Patterson, a former competitive athlete who had become one of the most effective guerrilla fighters on the planet. Her knowledge of the city's layout, combined with her natural speed and agility, made her nearly impossible to catch. "There's a Zelhari command post in the old shopping center," she reported to Ben over her radio. 12 guards, heavy weapons, but they're not watching the maintenance tunnels." Ben smiled grimly. The aliens had superior technology, but they thought like conquerors, not like survivors. They secured the obvious approaches but ignored the hidden passages that maintenance workers and delivery crews used every day. The assault on the command post took 15 minutes. Amy led half the team through the tunnels while Ben created a distraction at the main entrance. The Zelhari defenders found themselves under attack from directions they hadn't even known existed. Within minutes, their command post was inhuman. Hands and their communications equipment was being used to confuse other alien units. But the turning point came when the Zelhari deployed their secret weapon. Admiral Keshishtar had grown desperate as his casualties mounted and his advance stalled. Against the advice of his medical officers, he authorized the use of a biological weapon designed to break enemy morale. The weapon was a plague that caused severe pain and weakness without being fatal. It had been used successfully against other species, causing entire armies to surrender rather than endure the agony. The Zelhari released it into New Austin's atmosphere, expecting the human defenders to collapse within hours. They were wrong. Dr. Rachel Stone, the colony's chief medical officer, was among the first to be infected. The plague hit her like a hammer, causing pain that would have left most aliens unable to function. But instead of surrendering, she dragged herself to her laboratory and began working on a treatment. "This is Dr. Stone to all medical personnel," she broadcasted, her voice strained but determined. "We've been hit with a biological weapon. Symptoms include severe pain and muscle weakness. Continue your duties. We will not let this stop us." Throughout the colony, infected humans continued to fight. Parents defended their children despite pain that left them gasping. Soldiers maintained their positions even when the plague made it difficult to stand. The Zelhari weapon, designed to break human morale, instead became proof of human determination. Frank Williams, now infected and struggling to stay conscious, continued coordinating his neighborhood's defense. "Listen to me," he told his team over the radio. "This is just pain. Pain is temporary. Defeat is forever. Keep fighting." The sight of humans continuing to fight while obviously suffering from the biological weapon shattered Zelhari morale. Their own troops, witnessing an enemy that refused to break even under the most extreme circumstances, began to lose confidence in their ability to win. By the third day, the invasion had stalled completely. The Zelhari had lost nearly half their ground forces and controlled less than 5% of New Austin City. Their ships in orbit were running low on supplies, and reinforcements were still weeks away. Admiral Keshatar faced a choice no Zelhari commander had ever confronted. He could continue the assault and watch his forces be destroyed piece by piece, or he could retreat and admit that the mighty Zelhari Empire had been defeated by a single human colony. "Sir," General Thekmore reported, "our forces are requesting permission to withdraw. Morale is at critical levels. The troops are saying that humans are impossible to defeat." Keshtar stared at the tactical display showing the battle's progress. Every marker representing his forces was surrounded by red zones indicating human resistance. His elite warriors, the pride of the Zelhari military, had been fought to a standstill by civilians with improvised weapons. "Admiral," came another report. "We're intercepting human communications. They're not requesting reinforcements or supplies. They're asking for more ammunition so they can keep fighting." For the first time in his military career, Admiral Keshtar felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of an enemy that simply would not stop fighting. Dr. Nathan Pierce sat in his office aboard the research station Deep Thought, studying the most disturbing report he had ever written. As humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, he had been tasked with understanding why humans were so successful in combat against species that should have been superior in every way. His findings would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. "Computer, begin recording," Nathan said, activating his personal log. "This is Dr. Pierce's final report on human combat psychology. After 6 months of research, I believe I understand why our species excels at warfare in ways that terrify other races." He pulled up holographic displays showing brain scans, psychological profiles, and combat footage from dozens of battles. The data painted a picture that was both fascinating and frightening. Humans evolved on Earth under conditions that no other known species has experienced. Our planet was essentially a death world, where every creature was either predator or prey. For millions of years, our ancestors survived by becoming the ultimate persistence hunters. Nathan paused, thinking about the implications of his research. Other species had evolved in stable environments where cooperation and peaceful resource sharing were the keys to survival. Humans had learned to survive by never giving up, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. Meanwhile, in the Xerion system, Commander Zestara of the Crystalline Hegemony watched in horror as human boarding parties assaulted her flagship. The attack had come without warning, human ships appearing from behind a gas giant where no sensors could detect them. The humans moved through her ship like living nightmares. They adapted to the crystalline architecture instantly, using the ship's own structure against its defenders. Her warriors, bred for honor and glory in single combat, couldn't match the cold efficiency of soldiers who fought as a coordinated pack. "Security team to Deck 7, Zestara commanded through her ship's communication system. "Human boarders have breached the armory." But it was too late. The humans had already seized the weapons storage area and were using crystalline weapons against their former owners. Worse, they seemed to understand how the alien technology worked almost immediately, as if they had studied it for years instead of minutes. Captain Lisa Grant, now commanding the human assault ship Relentless, coordinated the boarding action from her bridge. The Terra Nova's former science officer had learned much about warfare in the months since first contact. "Team 3, proceed to the engine room," she ordered. "Team 4, secure the bridge. Remember, we need their navigation data intact." Her boarding teams consisted of soldiers who had trained specifically for fighting inside alien vessels. They wore armor designed to function in different atmospheric conditions and carried weapons that could adapt to various alien technologies. Most importantly, they had been taught to think like their enemies. "Captain," reported Sergeant Mike Torres over the communication link, "we've reached the bridge. The Crystalline commander wants to surrender." Lisa smiled grimly. "Accept her surrender, but keep your guard up. We've learned not to trust alien promises." Back on the research station, Dr. Pierce continued his analysis. He had interviewed hundreds of human soldiers and studied countless hours of combat footage. The patterns were clear and disturbing. Human soldiers report experiencing what they call a combat high during intense fighting, he recorded. Their bodies release chemicals that reduce pain, increase focus, and create a sensation that many describe as addictive. Other species experience these chemicals as stress responses that impair performance. For humans, stress makes them more dangerous. He pulled up footage from the Battle of New Austin, showing human defenders continuing to fight despite injuries that should have been incapacitating. The biological weapon that had been designed to break human morale had instead proven that pain was just another obstacle for humans to overcome. "Most alien species surrender when faced with certain death," Nathan continued. humans become more aggressive. They seem to view impossible odds not as reasons to give up, but as challenges to overcome. This psychological difference makes them nearly impossible to defeat through traditional military doctrine. In the diplomatic halls of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez faced a room full of terrified alien representatives. The news from the front lines had shaken the established powers of the galaxy. Human forces, though vastly outnumbered, were winning battle after battle through tactics that defied conventional military wisdom. "Ambassador Rodriguez," said the ethereal collective's representative, "your species has formed an alliance with the Void Touched. This is unprecedented. These beings have been our enemies for centuries." Elena nodded calmly. "The Void Touched approached us with an offer of mutual cooperation. They respect strength and they recognize that humanity possesses it. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans could form alliances with anyone who proved themselves in combat. The Void Touched, a species of energy beings that other races feared, had tested human resolve in a series of small skirmishes. When humans proved they could fight effectively against incorporeal enemies, the Void Touched had offered their respect and support. This alliance changes the balance of power in the galaxy," continued the ethereal representative. "The Void Touched possess technology that could make your species unstoppable." "We don't want to be unstoppable," Elena replied. "We want to be left alone. But if you continue to threaten us, we will continue to defend ourselves by any means necessary." The truth was more complex than Elena could admit in public. Humanity's alliance with the Void Touched had been born from mutual recognition of each other as warrior species. The energy beings understood human psychology in ways that other aliens couldn't, because they too had evolved in an environment where only the strongest survived. On Earth, Admiral Patricia Wells reviewed intelligence, reports that painted a disturbing picture of galactic politics. The Zelhari Empire, the Crystalline Hegemony, and 6 other major powers had formed what they called the Purification Alliance. Their stated goal was the complete elimination of humanity before human influence could spread to other species. "Ma'am," reported her intelligence officer, "we've intercepted communications from the Alliance leadership. They're not just afraid of our military capabilities. They're afraid of our ideas." Patricia studied the decoded messages. The alien alliance was terrified that other species might learn from human examples. They had seen subject races rebel against their masters using human tactics. They had witnessed peaceful species adopting human military doctrines. The idea that warfare could be studied, mastered, and even celebrated was spreading through the galaxy like a virus. "They're right to be afraid," Patricia said quietly. "We're not just fighting for our survival anymore. We're fighting for the right of every species to defend itself." The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity, the species accused of being warmongers, was inadvertently teaching other races how to fight for their freedom. The galaxy's oppressed populations were learning that surrender wasn't the only option when faced with superior force. Dr. Pierce's research had revealed another disturbing truth about human psychology. Unlike other species that fought for territory or resources, humans fought for abstract concepts like freedom, honor, and the protection of the innocent. These motivations made them impossible to negotiate with using traditional methods. "Human soldiers will die for people they've never met," he recorded. "They will sacrifice themselves to protect strangers. They view the defense of the weak as a sacred duty. This psychological trait makes them extraordinarily difficult to defeat, because you can't threaten something they value more than victory itself." On the front lines, Captain Kate Morgan commanded the human dreadnought Earth's Wrath as it led a fleet action against crystalline forces. Her ship was outnumbered 10-1, but her crew fought with the calm confidence of predators who had found their natural element. "Enemy flagship is launching fighters," reported her tactical officer. "Launch our own fighters and prepare the main guns," Kate ordered. "All ships execute pattern Delta 7. The human fleet moved with a coordination that amazed their enemies. Unlike alien formations that relied on rigid hierarchy and predetermined tactics, human fleets adapted constantly to changing conditions. Each ship's captain was trained to think independently while supporting the overall mission. The battle lasted 4 hours, and ended with the complete destruction of the crystalline fleet. Not a single human ship was lost, though several were heavily damaged. The victory sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy as word spread that human tactical superiority was becoming undeniable. Dr. Pierce's final report contained a warning that would prove prophetic. Human success in warfare stems from their unique evolutionary history, he concluded. They are persistence hunters who never give up, pack predators who coordinate instinctively, and territorial defenders who will fight to the death to protect their young. Most importantly, they view warfare not as a necessary evil, but as a test of their worth as a species. He paused, considering the implications of his research. The galaxy's established powers face a choice. They can accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic civilization, or they can try to destroy us. Admiral Patricia Wells stood on the bridge of the massive human flagship Indomitable, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history assembled before her. 10,000 alien ships from a dozen different species had gathered in the Nexus system, their combined firepower enough to crack planets. The Purification Alliance had brought everything they had to this final battle. "Admiral," reported Captain Davis from the tactical station. "Enemy fleet composition confirmed. Zelhari heavy cruisers, crystalline battleships, ethereal energy projectors, and 6 other major species. They're maintaining formation at maximum weapons range." Patricia nodded calmly. Her own fleet numbered just over 1,000 ships, but each one represented the finest military engineering humanity had ever achieved. More importantly, each ship was crewed by people who understood that this battle would determine whether humans had a future among the stars. "All ships, this is Admiral Wells," she announced over the fleet communication network. "Today we fight not just for our own survival, but for the right of every species in the galaxy to choose their own destiny. Show them what humans can do when we stand together." Across space, on the bridge of the alien flagship Eternal Dominance, Supreme Commander Velthar of the Purification Alliance felt confident despite the humans' reputation. Numbers had to matter eventually. 10 ships for every human vessel should be enough to end this threat once and for all. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Eliminate the human fleet and then proceed to their homeworlds. This ends today." The battle began with a move that shocked every military observer in the galaxy. Instead of meeting the alien charge with conventional tactics, the human fleet scattered in all directions, each ship moving independently, at maximum speed. Lieutenant Colonel Pete Harris led the first fighter squadron off the carrier Defiant, his pilots weaving between massive enemy battleships like insects around giants. These weren't ordinary pilots, but former extreme sports athletes who had learned to treat combat like the ultimate game. "Remember what we practiced," Pete told his squadron over the radio. "We're not trying to destroy their ships. We're trying to make them destroy each other." His fighters moved through the alien formation at incredible speed, firing just enough to get attention before disappearing behind larger vessels. The confused alien ships began firing at targets they couldn't track, often hitting their own allies in the process. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Grant, now serving as weapons development coordinator aboard the science vessel Discovery, activated humanity's secret weapon. For months, human scientists had been studying the fundamental forces of physics, looking for ways to turn the universe itself into a weapon. "Firing kinetic bombardment system," she announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to unleash. The weapon wasn't energy or explosives, but simple physics taken to its extreme. Human ships launched dense metal rods at nearly the speed of light, turning Einstein's famous equation into a weapon of devastating power. The projectiles hit the rear of the alien formation with the force of nuclear weapons, but without the radiation or heat signature that energy shields could deflect. "Impossible," gasped Supreme Commander Velthar as his rear battle line simply vanished in flashes of pure kinetic energy. "How are they doing this?" His question was answered by Admiral Patricia Wells herself, her image appearing on every alien ship's communication screen. "You asked what makes humans the galaxy's most formidable warrior race," she said, her voice carrying to thousands of alien commanders. "We don't just fight with weapons, we fight with our minds." The battle became a demonstration of everything that made human warfare unique. While alien fleets relied on overwhelming firepower and rigid formations, human ships moved like living creatures, each one adapting instantly to changing conditions. Captain Kate Morgan commanded the dreadnought Earth's Wrath as it led a charge directly into the heart of the alien formation. Her ship was designed to absorb incredible punishment while delivering devastating counterattacks. As enemy fire concentrated on her vessel, other human ships struck from unexpected angles. "Hull integrity at 60%, reported her damage. Control officer. "Good," Kate replied with a grim smile. "That means they're paying attention to us instead of the real threat." The real threat was humanity's newest ally, the Void Touched, who had taught humans how to fight enemies that existed in different dimensions. Combined human and energy being strike forces phased in and out of normal space, attacking alien ships from directions that shouldn't have existed. But the most shocking moment of the battle came when the alien alliance deployed their ultimate weapon, planet-killer missiles aimed at Earth itself while the human fleet was too far away to intercept them. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the missiles approached humanity's homeworld, expecting to witness the end of the human threat. Instead, they saw something that would be remembered for millennia. Earth itself opened fire. The entire planet had been converted into a massive weapons platform without anyone realizing it. Cities that looked normal from space revealed hidden artillery batteries. The moon turned out to be a giant fortress. Even the space stations that appeared to be civilian installations were actually part of an integrated defense network. "This is impossible," transmitted Supreme Commander Velthar, his voice filled with disbelief. "An entire world cannot be a weapon." Admiral Wells's reply was broadcast across the galaxy. "You never understood what you were fighting. You thought we were just another species trying to expand our territory. You were wrong. We are survivors, and we have turned survival into an art form." The planet-killer missiles were destroyed before they could reach Earth's atmosphere, shot down by weapons that emerged from what had appeared to be ordinary mountains and oceans. The display of coordinated planetary defense left alien observers speechless. Dr. Nathan Pierce, watching from his research station, finally understood the full scope of human preparation. "They didn't just build a military," he recorded in his Sarkir. "They turned their entire civilization into a weapon system that only activates when threatened with extinction." The battle continued for 8 hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Purification Alliance, despite their overwhelming numerical advantage, found themselves outmaneuvered, outfought, and demoralized by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The turning point came when human psychological warfare specialists began broadcasting messages to individual alien crews. They offered surrender terms that were more generous than anything the aliens had ever heard from conquerors. "Attention crystalline vessel Crystal Song," came a transmission from the human fleet. "We know you have wounded aboard. We offer medical assistance and safe passage to any ship that ceases hostilities." Commander Zestara, her ship heavily damaged and her crew suffering casualties, found herself facing an impossible choice. The humans were offering help to their enemies, showing mercy in the middle of a battle for survival. "Why?" she transmitted back. "Why offer aid to those who came to destroy you?" The response came from Admiral Wells herself. "Because we fight to protect life, not to destroy it. Surrender now, and we guarantee the safety of your crew." Across the alien fleet, similar conversations were taking place. Human commanders offered medical aid, safe passage, and even technological assistance to enemies who had come to commit genocide. The psychological impact was devastating to alien morale. One by one, alien ships began surrendering, not because they were defeated militarily, but because they couldn't understand why their enemies were showing them kindness in the moment of victory. The concept of mercy from a superior force was foreign to species that had built their civilizations on the idea that might made right. Supreme Commander Velthar found himself alone as his own allies abandoned the fight. His flagship was surrounded by human vessels, but no one was firing at him. Instead, they waited patiently for his decision. "Admiral Wells," he transmitted, his voice hollow with defeat. "I surrender the Purification Alliance fleet. We yield to human authority." Patricia Wells accepted the surrender with the same calm dignity she had shown throughout the battle. Commander Velthar, you and your crews are now under human protection. We will escort you to safe harbor and provide medical assistance to your wounded. The battle ended not with destruction and conquest, but with captured alien crews receiving medical treatment from human doctors and damaged ships being repaired by human engineers. The galaxy watched in amazement as the species they had feared as savage warmongers proved to be compassionate victors. 5 years later, Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood before a very different galactic council. The Great Hall now included representatives from dozens of species that had gained their freedom using tactics learned from human military manuals. The galaxy's old empires had collapsed, replaced by voluntary associations of free peoples. The motion to establish the Galactic Defense Alliance passes unanimously, Elena announced. Humanity accepts the responsibility of training and coordinating defense forces for any species that requests protection. The irony was complete. The species that had been condemned as warmongers had become the galaxy's protectors. Human military advisors now served on hundreds of worlds, not as conquerors, but as teachers.